For 6 years, I gave everything I had to that company. Late nights, early mornings, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries. Hell, I even took Zoom calls from a hospital bed once, still groggy from surgery. I was the regional operations director for Elevar International. I managed over 200 employees, oversaw supply chain operations across 3 states, and streamlined a system that saved the company over $4 million in 12 months. But apparently, that didn't make me a real leader. I still remember the moment, the way their laughter hung in the air like cologne. We were in the executive lounge after a quarterly performance meeting. I'd just wrapped a successful presentation, and for once I thought maybe I'd earned a seat at the table. "So, the annual exec dinner's on Friday," said Brent, the VP of logistics, loosening his tie like he'd actually done anything that quarter. "Private chef, ocean view, imported wines, the usual." I smiled. "Sounds great. Where should I RSVP?" There was a pause. One beat too long. Brent smirked. "Oh, sorry, Lisa. It's for senior leadership only. You know, the core team. Real decision makers." He said it casually, like it was policy. Like I hadn't just crushed every single KPI they handed me. Across the room, Dana, head of finance, stifled a laugh behind her wine glass. "I'm sure you understand," she added. "We just want to keep it strategic." Strategic. Right. I nodded, lips tight. "Of course." But inside, something cracked. Not in the angry, screaming, flip the table way. It was quieter than that. Colder. Something settled. Because I'd spent 6 years playing the game, working twice as hard, being twice as prepared, taking half the credit. And for what? To be told I wasn't one of them? To be reminded I was still on the outside looking in? Not this time. That night, I went home and canceled my RSVP to the dinner. Then I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started pulling receipts. Literally. You see, what Brent and Dana didn't realize, or maybe just didn't care about, was that I had access. As regional director, I handled logistics, yes, but that included travel approvals, corporate cards, expense reports, vendor payments. I didn't just see the numbers. I owned the system that processed them. And what I'd seen in the past few months didn't add up. Private charter flights to Napa Valley, luxury suites in Dubai. For client meetings that didn't show up in the CRM. Thousands spent at high-end spas in the Maldives, charged as team building. At first, I thought it was sloppy, arrogant. But as I dug deeper, it was intentional. A pattern, a system, a network of senior executives siphoning money through inflated vendor contracts and fake consulting invoices. All approved, all signed, all documented, by each other. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. A spreadsheet lit up in red, yellow, and green, the colors of corruption. Here's the thing most people forget. When you get left out, you see everything more clearly. Their blind spot? Thinking I'd just take the insult and keep my head down. Instead, I compiled a full report, cross-checked everything against the company's travel policy and federal compliance standards, flagged every violation, every suspicious signature, every transaction that reeked of fraud. Then I created a secure email. No name, no trace. Attached the files, typed just one line in the body. "If you're serious about ethics, you'll want to look into this." And I sent it. To internal audit, to compliance, and directly to the board of directors. Then I closed the laptop and waited. The next few days were normal, on the surface. Brent still strolled around like he was untouchable. Dana still wore those $1,000 heels and handed out fake compliments like candy. But the storm was already brewing. I saw the signs first. Subtle things, meetings disappearing from calendars, compliance officers quietly flying into headquarters, the IT department suddenly working weekends. And then, on Monday morning, it hit. A company-wide memo, unscheduled. Subject line, Urgent leadership review underway. By Wednesday, Brent was suspended pending investigation. Dana went on personal leave. 3 more senior execs disappeared from the org chart within 48 hours. And the executive dinner? Canceled. The memo didn't say why, but it didn't need to. I already knew. Because when you treat people like outsiders, when you use power to exclude and manipulate, eventually, someone fights back. Quietly. Efficiently. Like I did. They told me I wasn't a real leader, but leaders don't need lavish dinners or luxury retreats to prove their worth. Real leaders see the rot and remove it, even if it means burning the whole table down. The thing no one tells you about revenge? It's not the moment it hits. It's the silence that follows. The emails stop. The hallway chatter dies. People look at you just a little too long, but say a little too little. And you start to feel it, the weight of something shifting underneath your feet. By Thursday morning, it was no longer a rumor. Brent's nameplate had been removed from his office. Dana's car wasn't in the executive parking lot. 4 other directors, all part of the inner circle, were suddenly unavailable for comment. The exec floor was different. It used to buzz with false confidence, backslapping, wine-fueled banter. Now, it was like a courtroom before a verdict. Still, no one said anything to me. Not yet. I kept showing up, doing my job, saying little, watching everything. But then something happened I didn't expect. On Friday morning, I got an email with the subject line, "Private Invitation, Ethics Review Interview." Attached, a time slot, 3:30 p.m., room 7C, internal audit. I stared at it for a long time, because I'd sent the anonymous tip. I'd protected my tracks, used a throwaway server, scrubbed the metadata. It shouldn't trace back to me. But here I was, invited. I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal, answering emails, reviewing logistics updates, managing vendors. But my stomach twisted with every tick of the clock. When 3:30 hit, I walked into the audit floor where everything looked sterile. Too clean, like a place built to make people nervous. Room 7C was already open. 2 chairs, 1 long table, no glass, no windows, just a camera in the corner and a pitcher of untouched water. Across the table sat a woman in her 40s, crisp navy blazer, no expression. Her badge read, "Andrea West, Corporate Compliance Director." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "Ms. Harper, thank you for coming." I sat. "Of course." She folded her hands, calm, measured. "You've been with Elevar for how long?" 6 years, I replied. "Director of Regional Operations?" "Yes." She nodded. "Impressive numbers. Your division's metrics have been some of the best this company has seen." I said nothing. I wasn't here to be flattered. She leaned forward slightly. "We're conducting a formal investigation into misuse of company funds. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer honestly. Nothing will leave this room without your consent unless it's legally required. Understood?" I nodded. She pulled out a thin file, opened it. Then, to my surprise, she smiled, just slightly. "Ms. Harper, let me be direct. We already know it was you." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "The anonymous report. The metadata was clean, yes. The timing wasn't. The documents you included were pulled directly from internal routing systems, and most of them had your clearance level." I stared. Andrea continued, unbothered. "We cross-referenced submission logs, internal access timestamps, routing IDs. It all leads here." I didn't deny it. I couldn't. So instead, I said the only thing that made sense. "Are you here to fire me?" Andrea shook her head. "No, Lisa. Quite the opposite." She closed the file. "What you did took courage, precision, integrity. If even a fraction of what's in your report holds up. And from what we've seen, it does. You didn't just uncover financial fraud. You saved Elevire from potential federal charges. I exhaled. Slowly. She leaned in. But I need to ask you one question. For the record. Pause. Why didn't you come forward openly? I hesitated, then said, because when I wasn't invited to the executive dinner, I realized I wasn't part of their circle. And people outside the circle don't survive calling it out. They disappear. Quietly. Andrea didn't speak for a moment. Then she nodded, slowly. You're right. That's how it's been. But that ends now. She slid a document across the table. Confidential. Internal use only. At the top, executive misconduct and restructuring recommendations. 6 names, all flagged for immediate removal. Effective Monday, she said. The company will begin formal action. But there's one more thing we need. I looked up. She held out a separate folder. Slim, unmarked. This is a transition brief. We want you to step in, temporarily, as acting vice president of operations, to stabilize the department during the fallout. I froze. Me? The woman who wasn't invited to the dinner? I took the folder. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. Andrea stood. We'll support you fully. You just need to decide if you're ready. I stood too. Looked her in the eyes. I've been ready for 6 years. As I walked out of room 7C, the world looked different. The walls, the lights, even the people. They hadn't changed. I had. Because the moment they excluded me, they thought they'd pushed me down. But all they really did was give me the high ground. And I was just getting started. When Monday came, I didn't drive to my usual parking lot. I took the ramp to the executive garage, the one with license plate scanners and valet service. No one stopped me. No one questioned anything. My clearance had already been updated. As I stepped into the private elevator alone, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Same black blazer, same minimalist makeup, same steady eyes. But this wasn't the same Lisa Harper. This Lisa wasn't asking for a seat at the table. She was the table now. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, it was like stepping into a silent battlefield. Desks cleared, offices empty. You could feel the ghosts of the recently removed, Brent, Dana, and their smug little alliance, still hanging in the air. A few heads turned as I walked past, not out of greeting but recognition. Whispers followed me like shadows. She's the one. She's the reason they got fired. Is she the new VP? I didn't stop, didn't flinch, just walked straight into the corner office that used to belong to Brent. The plaque had already been removed. The desk was wiped clean, a blank slate. Fitting. There was a man already seated on the guest couch, older, polished, wearing an Elevare lapel pin that only the board members ever wore. He stood, extended a hand. Gerald Takano, interim board liaison. I shook his hand. Lisa Harper. We've reviewed your report, he said. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it. You didn't just uncover fraud. You traced patterns, followed vendor trails, even projected future liabilities. Do you have a background in forensic auditing? I smiled. Number just a background in being underestimated. He chuckled. Well, it worked in our favor. Then his expression grew serious. You're stepping into chaos. Legal's involved. Finance is bleeding. Half the department heads are either resigning or lawyering up. Morale is in freefall. Can you handle that? I met his gaze. I've been handling it for years, just without the title. He nodded once. Then it's yours. Officially. He handed me a leather-bound folder. Inside, contract, terms, interim vice president of operations. I signed it on the spot. Click. Pen down. Everything changed. By noon, I was in the war room, where just a week ago, I wasn't even invited to meetings. Now, I was running them. A team of 5 department leads sat around the table, stiff and uncertain. I recognized most of them. They were the ones who used to avoid eye contact when Brent snapped his fingers. I started simply. "I know what you're all thinking," I said. "You're wondering how long this lasts, whether this is real, if I'm just a placeholder until the board finds someone safer." No one spoke. "I'm not here to convince you with words," I continued. "I'm here to stabilize the company, to fix what they broke, to clean the blood off the floor and remind everyone that Elevare still has a future." I paused, letting the silence settle. Brent, Dana, and the rest, they built a culture of fear and favoritism. That's over. From now on, no more closed-door clubs, no more real leaders only. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. Still silence. Then one of the leads, Carmen from compliance, slowly nodded. "You've got my vote." "Mine too," someone else added. The others followed. For the first time in days, the room felt alive. We moved fast, re-audited every major vendor, froze all non-essential expenses, launched a transparent reporting system with real-time approvals. By 3 p.m., I'd personally called every major client affected by the scandal. I didn't send them to PR. I didn't read from a script. I spoke like a human being. I apologized. Took ownership. Promised better. And you know what? Most of them stayed. Because when you've been lied to by polished suits and corporate doublespeak, authenticity becomes the most valuable currency in the room. As the sun began to set, I found myself alone in Brent's old office. My office now. I looked out over the skyline. The city lights flickering on one by one. Below me, Elevare kept moving. Calls being made, reports being filed, systems running. The company hadn't collapsed. It had evolved. My phone buzzed. A message from Andrea. DOJ just called. They've opened a formal investigation into Dana and Brent. You were right about everything. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Good. Let me know if they need anything else. I locked the phone and set it aside. Because the real work was just beginning. They tried to exile me. Instead, I became their reckoning. And from this moment forward, no one would forget the name Lisa Harper. 2 weeks. That's how long it took to steady the ship. 2 weeks of 14-hour days, non-stop meetings, back-to-back damage control calls, and enough legal briefings to make my head spin. But we did it. The bleeding slowed. The clients calmed down. The investors? Still cautious, but watching closely. And me? I was no longer the interim anything. The board made it official. I was named Vice President of Operations. No asterisks, no footnotes. The same people who once laughed at me in hallways now greeted me with tight smiles and 2 eager nods. My inbox was suddenly full of congrats messages from colleagues who'd never responded to a single email before. Funny how quickly respect shows up once power enters the room. But the truth? I didn't trust it. Respect that arrives after you win isn't respect. It's self-preservation. And something about the way people moved around me now felt off. Not afraid. Not hostile. Just too careful. Like they were waiting to see if I'd really changed things. Or if I'd just become the new version of the old problem. It was a Friday evening when it all shifted again. Everyone had gone home. The executive floor was dark, quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the glow of city lights beyond the glass walls. I stayed late, catching up on final approvals, sipping cold coffee that had once been hot. That's when I saw the email. No subject, no sender, just one line in the body. Watch your back. Not everyone's happy with your promotion. My chest tightened. Not fear, not exactly. More like alertness, like a cold current under the skin. I checked the metadata, scrubbed clean. No trace. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to cover their steps. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it. I just sat there for a while, staring at the screen. And suddenly, I remembered something Andrea had said during our first meeting. Something about how removing Brent and Dana wouldn't be the end. It would just peel back the next layer. Because when corruption goes that deep, it's never just two people. It's roots, systems, a network, and I just stepped into its spotlight. That night, I drove home slower than usual, watched the mirrors, checked the license plates behind me. Paranoia? Maybe. But paranoia kept people alive in this game. When I got home, I locked every door, pulled the curtains, poured a whiskey I didn't really want, and pulled out the old laptop, the one I'd used to compile the original evidence. Still intact, still encrypted, still secure. I opened it just to be sure. And what I saw made my blood run cold. A folder, one I hadn't created. Whispers inside it, logs, messages, dozens of them, private Slack chats, deleted internal threads, confidential memos forwarded from anonymous accounts. It was a full trail, a digital whisper network of employees, mostly junior staff, assistants, lower-level managers, quietly documenting everything. Expenses, meetings, off-the-record conversations. One message read, Dana told procurement to bury the fake vendor invoices. They're hiding it in facility ops now. Another, they said Lisa's getting too loud. That she's useful for now but won't last. And one that stopped me cold. I heard them say she'll either be promoted out or burned out. Their words, not mine. I leaned back, breathing slowly. This wasn't just about me. It never was. Brent and Dana? They were the face. But behind them was an entire culture designed to grind people down, use them up, push them out the moment they stopped being convenient. And I wasn't the only one they'd targeted. I was just the only one who fought back. Until now. Until this. I copied the entire folder, backed it up twice, then sent an encrypted message to Andrea. We need to talk. I think the rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought. Within minutes, she replied, I'm coming over. By 9 p.m., she was in my living room, reading through the logs on my kitchen counter, her face turning grayer by the second. These people aren't just greedy, she muttered. They're calculated. They've been manipulating internal promotions, vendor contracts, even HR investigations, I nodded. And if they know I'm onto them, they'll strike first. She looked at me. So what do you want to do? I stared out the window. The city was still humming out there, unaware that another war was quietly unfolding inside Elivare's polished glass walls. What I've always done, I said. Expose them. All of them. Andrea hesitated. That'll trigger a second wave, bigger than before. Then we prepare, I said. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reckoning. For every person they silenced, for every career they buried, for every woman they told, you're not a real leader. This time, they wouldn't see it coming. Monday arrived like thunder. By 9 a.m., every department head had received a formal request from compliance. Submit all vendor contracts and expense reports from the past 12 months. Full transparency, no redactions. No one said it aloud, but the message was clear. Something was happening. Again. And I was at the center of it. The whispers returned. I could feel them trailing me down the hall, slipping between doorways, skimming just beneath fake smiles. She's doing it again. Another sweep? Who does she think she is? But this time, I didn't care, because I wasn't cleaning up after corruption anymore. I was burning it out, root and stem. That morning, Andrea and I presented the Whispers folder to the Internal Risk Committee. The room was ice cold. Everyone knew something serious was coming, but they didn't expect what they saw on the screen. Memos, screenshots, patterns, promotions offered, then revoked. Salaries capped below male counterparts with less experience. Vendor deals rerouted to shell companies owned by executives' relatives. One by one, names appeared. Some I expected, some I didn't. And some were still sitting in that very room. By the time we were done, the silence was deafening. No one moved. No one blinked. Then Gerald Takano, the board liaison, stood slowly. "This company," he said, voice low, "owes you more than an apology, Ms. Harper." I didn't reply. I just opened the next file. The termination recommendations: 7 names, senior executives, mid-tier managers, 1 HR director. One by one, I listed their offenses. Not just financial fraud, but retaliation, harassment, abuse of power. By the end of it, no one questioned the list. They only questioned how it had gone unnoticed for so long. When the meeting ended, Gerald pulled me aside. "Lisa, if you ever want a board seat—" I cut him off. "Not yet. I'm not done building." He nodded, understanding. "Then take what you need. You've earned it." But I didn't go back to my office after that. Instead, I walked down to the second floor, to a department most executives forgot existed: operations support. The people who actually kept Elevare running. I passed rows of cubicles, heads buried in spreadsheets and support queues. Most of them didn't notice me. A few glanced up, puzzled. I stopped at a small desk near the back. The nameplate read, "Jasmine Lin, Logistics Coordinator." She looked up, startled. "VP Harper? Is something wrong?" I smiled. "Number I came to thank you." Her brow furrowed. "For what?" "For the file labeled Whispers." Her eyes widened, lips parted like she might deny it. I raised a hand. "You were smart to stay anonymous, but I know it was you." She said nothing, so I continued. "You saved this company, Jasmine. You kept the receipts when no one else dared. You documented what the rest of them tried to bury. You reminded me I wasn't alone." Tears welled in her eyes, fast and hot. She blinked hard, trying to compose herself. "They said if I spoke up, I'd be blacklisted forever," she whispered. I almost believed them. "They were wrong," I said. I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a formal promotion offer, salary bump, relocation options, a guaranteed seat on the internal ethics committee. She stared at it, stunned. "You're not invisible anymore," I said. "You're the new blueprint." I left her like that, speechless, trembling, holding proof that integrity still mattered. By that afternoon, the company buzzed with a different energy. 7 executives were escorted out under quiet HR supervision. No dramatic firings, no finger pointing, just a clean sweep, swift and undeniable. And me? I sat in the very same boardroom I'd once been denied access to. Not to beg, not to prove myself, but to lead. As the final presentations wrapped, someone leaned over and asked, "Will you be attending the executive retreat this year?" I smiled. "Only if we hold it in the operations center. Let the real heroes see the ocean view for once." Laughter rippled through the room, but not mocking, not smug. Respect? It had taken everything. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every whispered threat, to get here. But now I was here, and I wasn't going anywhere. Later that week, HR unveiled a new program: Leadership Transparency Initiative, anonymous reporting, equity audits, mandatory ethics training for all managers. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't fix everything overnight. But it was a start, a real one. And as I left the building that Friday evening, I walked past the lobby where it all began, where I once stood invisible, excluded from a dinner that supposedly defined real leadership. Funny. They thought power was found behind mahogany doors and catered banquets. But I learned the truth the hard way. Real leaders don't build empires on silence. They rise in the ashes of those who did. And they make damn sure the next generation never gets told, "You don't belong here." Not on their watch. Not ever again. They fired me on a Wednesday. In a beige room with flickering LED lights and the smell of burnt coffee lingering like a bad decision. The new boss, Jordan, freshly imported from some management consultancy with a jawline shaped by arrogance, looked at me and said, "I'm not going to spend another dime on an incompetent employee." He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just slid the termination letter across the table with the smug precision of a man who'd never been punched in the face by reality. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because 3 years ago, when I sold my startup, I wrote a clause into the acquisition agreement. A very specific clause. If I were ever terminated without cause, I had the right to buy the company back for the original sale price. $1. And Jordan? Jordan had no idea. But if we're being honest, and I think we should be at this point, this story doesn't begin with Jordan. It begins with a burned-out laptop in a fourth-floor walk-up in Seattle 7 years ago. No elevator, no insulation. Just me, a dream, and a UX prototype held together by duct tape, caffeine, and late-night tears. Back then, I didn't even call it a startup. It was just the thing I'm working on. A data platform that helped small businesses predict churn by analyzing customer behavior in real time. Not flashy, not sexy. But damn, it worked. I remember the exact moment I knew I had something. A florist down the street messaged me to say the tool warned her about a drop-off in engagement. She called a few customers, sent handwritten notes. Her monthly revenue went up 17% the next quarter. She cried. I cried. It was stupid, beautiful, and more real than anything I'd ever built. Soon the thing I was working on had a name, a logo, a registered trademark, and a team of 5 crammed into my living room, working off folding tables from IKEA. We called ourselves Pulse, because we helped small businesses feel the heartbeat of their customers. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. We didn't sleep. We built. We failed. We patched things at 3 a.m. and then danced around my kitchen when the dashboards finally stopped crashing. 16 months later, we got our first investment offer. Then came a second. Then a third. But I didn't want the whole VC circus. What I needed was infrastructure. Servers, support, real people who knew how to scale. That's when a mid-sized analytics firm stepped in. They promised stability, resources, a future. "We want to scale your vision, not steal it," the CEO told me over rooftop drinks, while a violinist played something pretentious in the background. I was cautious. I'd seen too many founders get squeezed out of their own creations. So I hired a lawyer, Carmen. Fierce, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could read a contract like a battlefield map. Together, we built in protections, equity, decision-making power, and one clause that was my insurance policy. If I'm terminated without cause, I can repurchase Pulse for the original sale price. I remember Carmen raising an eyebrow. "You really think they'll go for this?" "They won't even notice it," I said. "It's hidden between indemnity terms and boilerplate language." They didn't. And for a while, I didn't need it. The first year post-acquisition was actually good. They let me run product. My team expanded. Pulse's user base tripled. I finally started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. It wasn't my living room anymore, but it still felt like mine. Until Jordan showed up. New management, new vision, new buzzwords. He walked in like he'd been sent to save us from ourselves. Started changing things that didn't need changing. Fired 2 of my original engineers for being culturally misaligned, which apparently meant they didn't fake laugh at his jokes. He held meetings about synergy and alignment and value-forward solutions, and I started to feel like a stranger in my own company. Then came the budget cuts. He slashed R&D, axed our customer feedback team, changed the product name from Pulse to Core Sense, which sounded less like a tech solution and more like a multivitamin. And still, I said nothing. Just took notes, waited, watched, until that Wednesday. The day he fired me for being misaligned with the company's new strategic direction. The same day, I walked out with nothing but a laptop sleeve and a half-used notebook. And a plan. That night, I called Carmen. No words, just two numbers. 14C. She exhaled. Still valid? Still valid. She didn't ask anything else, just said, I'll draft the notice and prepare the check. A single dollar. They took my name off the website, cut my access, scrubbed my legacy like I'd never existed. And while they were busy planning their next rebrand and congratulating themselves on eliminating inefficiencies, my lawyer was preparing the paperwork that would blow the hinges off their empire. Because the thing about fine print? It doesn't matter. Until it does. They replaced me by Monday. Didn't even wait for my badge to deactivate before they posted the job listing. Head of Product Innovation. Urgently hiring. As if ripping out the brain of a system didn't require any recovery time. But I wasn't watching them from a distance. I was watching them from the shadows. You learn a lot when people think you've disappeared. For one, I learned that Jordan, my replacement, had pitched the board on a post-founder growth model, which is a shiny phrase that means, get rid of the people who care too much. They're expensive. I also learned that they'd quietly cut employee development stipends and were now outsourcing QA to a firm known for, let's say, generous bug thresholds. The cracks weren't forming. They were already there. Carmen and I met that Tuesday in a quiet corner booth of an overpriced cafe. She wore her usual all-black zero flare, except a silver pin shaped like a dagger. She ordered tea. I ordered clarity. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a copy of the original contract, the drafted buyback notice, and a check. $1, blue ink. Signed by me. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because this wasn't just business. This was Pulse. This was my nights, my weekends, my birthday spent fixing back-end crashes with one hand and eating boxed cake with the other. This was every sacrifice I made while others were living lives I could only scroll past on Instagram. This will hit hard, Carmen said quietly. They won't believe it's real. At first. I nodded. Let them laugh. Let them delay. I just want the clock ticking. See, here's the thing about Section 14, C. They had 30 days to respond. 30. That was the timer. If they ignored it, I could take it to arbitration. If they rejected it, I could sue. But if they accepted it, even reluctantly, then Pulse would return to the hands of the woman who wrote its DNA into every line of code. And they wouldn't even see it coming. By Friday, I heard from Aisha, one of the last remaining product engineers from the early days. She texted, everything's falling apart. They're using slides from your old pitch deck like they're new ideas. Feels wrong. Just letting you know. She didn't know about the clause yet. Nobody did. But cracks like that? They matter. People feel when the soul of a company is gone. They feel it in the coldness of all-hands meetings. In the way new leadership dodges real questions. In the hallway silences that used to be laughter. They feel it in the emails that say realignment instead of layoffs. And inside Pulse, the soul had already left the building. By week 2, Carmen had sent the notice. FedEx. Certified. Time-stamped. A letter so short it felt disrespectful to the chaos it would unleash. Per Section 14C of the original purchase agreement, I hereby exercise my right to repurchase the entity known as Pulse Analytics at the original sale price. Please find enclosed payment in full. No emotion, no threats, just legal gravity. The kind of thing that makes a junior associate choke on their lunch when they open it. I imagined the moment it hit Jordan's desk. The confusion, the scoff, the she's bluffing. I didn't need to be there to know the script. It's the same one men like Jordan always follow. They dismiss. They delay. They deny. Until suddenly they're out of options and wondering how it all slipped through their fingers. By week 3, the silence turned heavy. No response. No formal reply from the company. But the whispers began. 2 clients reached out. Not directly, of course. Too risky. But through mutuals. The message was clear. If she's doing something new, let us know. We only stuck around because she was still involved. One of those clients was worth 6 figures a quarter. The other ran their entire infrastructure on our platform. I didn't respond. Not yet. Let the tension rise. Let the storm build quietly. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Carmen called me. They finally forwarded the notice to legal, and their general counsel, Marjorie Green, has questions. Like? Like if the clause is real, if it's enforceable, if it's a typo. I laughed. Tell her it's not just real, it's permanent ink. Carmen chuckled. I already did. She's not happy. Good. That was the first drop of blood in the water. Because the thing about Betrayal isn't just that they fired me. It's that they thought they were smart enough to get away with it. They thought I was sentimental, emotional, software. They forgot I was strategic. And I played the long game. The kind where $1, placed correctly, could become a wrecking ball. The kind where a legally binding clause could become a guillotine. They buried me with a calendar invite. Now I was digging them up with a pen. It started with a meeting. An emergency all-hands called on a Monday at 8:30 a.m., a time intentionally chosen to make people sweat. Organizational Resilience Strategy Session, the calendar invite read. Translation, we're spiraling and we're trying to make it sound like leadership has a plan. Inside the glass-paneled war room, Jordan was pacing. I wasn't there, of course, but word gets out. One thing tech bros always underestimate? The loyalty of engineers. Aisha had her phone in her lap, sending me live updates like a war correspondent. 8:36 a.m. Jordan's wearing a Patagonia vest. That's never a good sign. 8:42 a.m. He just said we're evolving into a more agile organism. 8:44 a.m. Marjorie is glaring at him like she'd rather be hit by a Tesla. Apparently, someone finally read the clause. And not just skimmed it, but understood it. The implications. The language. The brutal precision of Section 14C, I could picture it perfectly. The blood draining from Jordan's face as he processed that they'd accepted a deal with a silent tripwire, one that I had just activated with a $1 check. He probably laughed at first. Or tried to. They always do. Until the legal department explained it in slow, terrifying detail. Yes, the clause is valid. No, there's no expiration. Yes, she's within the 30-day window. No, we never completed a full legal merger. Yes, the entity still exists under her name. The moment they realized Pulse wasn't actually absorbed, it was just leased. That's when the panic began. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? Hi, Laura. This is Marjorie Green, General Counsel for CoreSense. I'd like to discuss the letter you sent. Straight to the point. No small talk. I respect that. I'm listening, I said. I want to clarify that while your clause appears facially legitimate, we believe the intent of the agreement may not align with your interpretation. I smiled into the phone. Marjorie, are you trying to say the contract feels wrong? A pause. No, I'm saying this would be highly disruptive. Disruption is innovation's twin. I'm sure Jordan has that quote framed in his office. She didn't laugh. Instead, she sighed. Look, there are a lot of moving parts here. We're open to a discussion. I'm not, I said. I've already paid. And with that, I ended the call. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's confident. It's knowing the exact leverage point and applying just enough pressure to make the structure buckle. And buckle it did. By the end of that week, 3 senior engineers walked out. No exit interviews, no farewell bagels, just cardboard boxes and middle fingers. One of them left a sticky note on his monitor that read, "We built Pulse to serve people, not marketing jargon. Good luck syncing your synergy." That one ended up on Twitter. 10,000 likes in a day. One investor retweeted it with the caption, "We need to talk about what happened to Pulse. I don't like what I'm hearing." Meanwhile, inside the company, Jordan tried to play it cool. Sent out an all-staff memo about navigating turbulence and remembering our core values. I got a copy forwarded to me by 3 people. Core values. They forgot the core of the company wasn't in their metrics. It was in the people who built it. By Saturday, Pulse's biggest client froze their next round of funding. Official reason, internal vendor review. Unofficial reason, they knew I was coming back. That's when the board finally stepped in. Not because they cared about me, but because now it was about money. Jordan was summoned to a private meeting on Sunday. 9 a.m. sharp. No assistants, no cover story. Just the people who write the checks asking one simple question. Did you know she could do this? And Jordan, confident, cocky, never read a footnote Jordan, had to admit he didn't. They fired him the next morning. No farewell speech, no email blast, just silence. Aisha messaged me one word: decapitated. But this wasn't about vengeance. Not really. This was about restoration. Pulse had become unrecognizable, a ghost of its former self, parading around in pastel rebrands and bloated vision decks. And now, piece by piece, I was reclaiming it. Not with rage, but with precision. They thought I was gone, that I'd cry, move on, start over. But I was never starting over. I was starting again, from exactly where I left off. By the end of the week, Carmen had sent over the final documents to the board. Clear, elegant, legally airtight. I was exercising my right. And the funny thing is, they still had one more chance to stop me. One more window to negotiate. Delay. Fight. But they didn't, because now they were afraid of what I'd do if they pushed back. And that was the moment I knew I had won. The envelope arrived on a Monday, 9:12 a.m. Stamped, signed, delivered. It was hand-carried to the board's interim chair by a courier in a navy blazer who didn't smile. Inside, $1, a legal declaration of asset repurchase, and a clause that had just grown teeth. By noon, the whispers turned to roars. Emails flew. Slack threads exploded. A crisis meeting was called. Emergency Zoom invites went out with subject lines like urgent, clause 14, see action item. And somewhere inside the fourth floor executive wing, surrounded by soundproof walls and desperation, someone finally said it out loud. She owns it. She owns Pulse again. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. I was pacing a quiet office 3 blocks away, furnished with 2 desks, 1 espresso machine, and a single framed photo of the original Pulse team, standing shoulder to shoulder in a kitchen that smelled like burnt toast and soldered wires. Carmen sat at the desk across from me, typing with one hand, sipping tea with the other. Her calm annoyed me, in a good way. They'll try to stall, she said. Probably say there's ambiguity. There's not, I said. They'll try anyway. I nodded. Let them. Power doesn't need to scream. It waits. It watches. It prepares. They had made their mistake. And I had made my move. By Tuesday, the Pulse website started glitching. Old files reappeared. My founder's profile photo resurfaced for a few minutes before being yanked down again. A remnant of a forgotten internal database pinged out an automated newsletter with my name in the signature. It was like the company itself was trying to remember me. Or warn them. Jordan was gone. The board had gone quiet. And inside the company, something new was taking root. Or maybe something old was waking back up. Sam texted me at 11:04 a.m. Sam, the last intern I ever hired. Bright-eyed, code-brained, always spilled his lunch on something vital. His message was simple. They're unprepared. People are talking. It feels like the lights are coming back on. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I opened the folder Carmen had prepared. Inside, the finalized transfer of controlling shares. My name. My company. Again. At 3 p.m., I walked past the Pulse building. Not to gloat. Not to peacock. I wore jeans, a black hoodie, and sunglasses. Blended in with the crowd, carrying a tote bag and a secret. I stopped at the cafe next door and ordered a coffee. That's when I saw it. Through the glass. The executive team pacing inside a conference room, visibly arguing. Vanessa, the new head of culture and brand identity, the one who once replaced user feedback reports with emotional vibe mapping, was pointing at a whiteboard with desperation in her eyes. I didn't have to hear her to know what she was saying. We lost control. What do we do? You don't do anything, Vanessa. You did this. You underestimated a woman who built your entire platform using a laptop with a cracked screen and a belief stronger than your marketing buzzwords. And now? Now you're just watching the consequence arrive. By Thursday, the headlines started dropping. Founder reclaims tech startup with $1 clause, a masterclass in fine print power moves. The return of Pulse, how a dismissed founder took back her company overnight. The dollar that sank a CEO. My inbox started flooding. Old clients, former engineers, journalists, podcasters. Even 2 angel investors who'd passed on Pulse in the early days wrote awkward apologies wrapped in offers. But the only message that made me pause came from Julian, our former head of UX. He had been quiet for over a year. Left the company the week Jordan introduced a minimalist data flow model that stripped his team of everything useful. His email read, "I don't know what you're building now, but if there's a seat, I'll stand until there is." That was the moment I let myself breathe. Not because I'd won, but because something worth building was ready to be rebuilt. Friday morning, I walked into our new office space. 4th floor, clean, bright, unbranded, no motivational posters, just one wall painted white, waiting for a new roadmap. Sam was already there. So was Aisha. Carmen brought donuts. I brought something else. A frame. Inside it, the check. $1, slightly creased. Blue ink, bold stroke. I hung it on the wall. Not as a trophy, as a warning. Read the contract. At 2:47 p.m., the final confirmation came through. Ownership transferred. Assets reassigned. Infrastructure unlocked. Pulse was mine again. No handshakes, no parades. Just a digital signature, a system reboot, and a server that purred like it had been holding its breath for years. They thought firing me would erase me. They forgot I built the source code. They replaced me in a boardroom. But I came back through the clause they never read. And now? Now I wasn't just back. I was building something sharper, smarter, louder, something with fire in its wiring and memory in its walls. The relaunch wasn't glamorous, no neon lights, no hype video, no champagne fountains or TED-style spotlight moments. Just 10 of us in folding chairs around a whiteboard with the words, Pulse 2.0, written in red marker. Julian brought bagels. Sam had a busted projector. Carmen brewed the coffee herself. It was a war room, not a launch party. And that's exactly how we wanted it. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about resurrection. We didn't start with strategy decks or market forecasts. We started with a question. What made Pulse matter? Not the tech, not the UI, not the pitch. It was trust. It was knowing that someone on the other side of the dashboard actually cared whether your business lived or died, whether your customers stayed, whether you could pay rent this month. It was personal. Somewhere along the way, Pulse had lost that. And now we were going to bring it back. One painful, beautiful sprint at a time. The first 2 weeks were brutal. Old code had to be rewritten, licenses repurchased, servers reconfigured. Our cloud environment was a mess of outdated credentials and broken pipelines. Vanessa's team had renamed every key file with euphemisms like Synergy Map Final V4. Use this one. And it took Julian 3 full days just to untangle their nonsense. But no one complained. Not once. We were too busy. Too wired in. Too hungry. The kind of hunger that only comes after they tell you you're done. I made a rule. No suits, no buzzwords, no hierarchy. If you had an idea, pitch it. If you saw a problem, fix it. I wasn't interested in status meetings or branded t-shirts. We printed one thing. One sign taped to the inside of our front door. Earn it again. And slowly we did. By month's end, the first clients returned. quietly at first. Private emails, polite check-ins. Then came the referrals. Then came the public declarations. Joya, our first enterprise client, posted a photo of our new dashboard with the caption, "Feels like coming home." It went viral. Investors noticed. Competitors noticed. The old Pulse board definitely noticed. Even Brent, the executive who once mocked me for emotional attachment, posted a LinkedIn article titled, "Why Founders Matter More Than Ever." He blocked me the same day. Meanwhile, the Pulse brand that CoreSense tried to keep running? It withered. You can't fake soul. You can't scale care from a spreadsheet. And you can't replace a founder with someone who doesn't understand the why behind the code. The media storm came next. First a blog post, then a podcast episode, then an op-ed. She got fired. Then she took back her company for $1. A clause, a check, and a quiet revolution. Laura Winters and the legal boomerang when fine print fights back. They called me everything from brilliant to dangerous to the new face of founder resilience. But I wasn't chasing titles. I just wanted my company back. And I got it. Not with fury, with foresight. The day I was invited to speak at a tech conference, ironically the same one Jordan once bragged about keynoting, I almost said no. Too tired, too busy, too not interested in clapping rooms. But Carmen said, they need to hear it. And maybe I needed to say it. So I walked on stage, no slides, no script. Just me. I told them the truth about the microwave, the $1 clause. The day I was fired and the moment I smiled because I knew I was already prepared. About building something with love and watching it get turned into a quarterly bullet point by people who never stayed late or skipped meals or poured their rent into a product launch. And then I told them the part no one talks about. The loneliness, the weight of silence after betrayal, the urge to burn it all down versus the patience to wait for the exact moment to strike. And the lesson I left them with: always read the contract. Especially if you're trying to erase the woman who wrote it. The room went still. Then it erupted. Not because I built Pulse, but because I took it back. Back at the office, the framed check still hangs above the door. $1, crumpled slightly. A reminder that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, quiet, legal, lethal. I'm not angry anymore. I'm focused. Because revenge fades. But rebuilding? That lasts.